Orchestra is a complex body. Each musician has the responsibility to work together in order to produce one composition with a singular message. At the same time, to create music effectively, the orchestra has the responsibility to choose the most qualified musicians based on their talent. This is completed with the emergence of labor equality laws created during the second wave feminist movement and the blind audition, an audition process that hides the identity of the auditionee from a panel of judges through a screen or divider. For centuries, only men musicians were directly chosen by the maestro, the head of the orchestra, for the male musicians thought that their cohesiveness would be disrupted by women musicians. Because of this discrimination, women began to form their own orchestras. Throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, orchestras such as the Cleveland Women's Orchestra and the Women's Symphony Orchestra of Chicago formed. However, women musicians were tired of being secluded from male orchestras. Women musicians felt that the reasoning for being barred from these orchestras was unjust.
I do believe there is still a degree of hesitancy on the part of some folks to hire a woman. They don't think we're physically strong enough. They don't think that we're going to last should we have children.
Furthermore, there existed a belief that the addition of women into orchestras would be counterproductive because women were supposedly distractions. Men believed that women were incapable of playing music that required a more masculine touch. They argued that women were too frail and soft to capture the power and boldness that only men were capable of creating. Moreover, according to the men, women were expected to have and raise children, and thus would be unable to maintain the strength and time necessary for an orchestral career. The cult of domesticity, a mindset that women belonged in the home, also played a large role in preventing women from entering orchestras. During World War II, when most of the nation's men were overseas, women were used to replace them in orchestras. However, when the men returned from war, women were expected to recede back into the domestic sphere. Luckily, labor equality laws as a result of the second wave feminist movement and the introduction of the blind audition allow women musicians the opportunity to access orchestral positions through more equitable means by providing women the same rights as men musicians. Although the opportunities provided for women musicians occurred indirectly, the orchestras and male musicians took the responsibility to adequately provide these opportunities for women by ensuring fair hiring and acceptance.
Labor equality laws that helped ensure women a non-discriminatory hiring process arose during the second wave feminist movement, which started with the publication of Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique.
It had to begin with women because society had evolved so rapidly to the point where women had to really confront the barriers to equality to take their full place in the mainstream of society.
Most women were dissatisfied with their lives after being pushed back into the domestic realm after World War II, and decided to take responsibility against this inequity in 1963. During the same time, the civil rights movement was in full swing. Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prevent employment discrimination due to race, creed, and color.
The purpose of this law is simple. It does not restrict the freedom of any American so long as he respects the rights of others. It does not give special treatment to any citizen. It does say the only limit to a man's hope for happiness and for the future of his children shall be his own ability.
Seeing such action, women were emboldened to take their own responsibility to improve their own status in society. In June of 1966, the Third National Conference of State Commissions was held in Washington, D.C. Kay Clarenbach, Betty Friedan, and others proposed a resolution, in which Betty Friedan notes that all of us shared the feeling that something immediate and urgent had to be done about the enforcement of Title VII in respect to sex discrimination. Title VII was part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which stated that employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin was forbidden. As a result, the National Organization for Women, or the NOW organization, formed as women decided that there needed to exist an organization that took the responsibility for speaking on behalf of women across the nation, and more importantly, generate results. One of its first goals was to change Executive Order Number 11246, which enforced non-discrimination employment in government positions because it did not include women in its enforcement. Because of this, the NOW organization sent a letter to President Lyndon B. Johnson to add the word sex to Executive Order Number 11246. Consequently, he signed Executive Order Number 11375 in agreement to the wishes of the NOW organization. Thus, by taking control and speaking up for their own rights, women were able to secure labor equality in all occupations.
Another aspect of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the creation of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC. The EEOC enforces non-discrimination laws, including Executive Order No. 11375, by making it illegal to discriminate against an employee or job applicant due to his or her race, color, religion, age, disability, or genetic information, national origin, and sex.
The Equal Opportunities Employment Act was to guarantee that everybody, women, sexual orientation, race, color, creed, got an equal opportunity at whatever jobs were available. It was absolutely a terrific thing to happen. Was it really necessary? I think absolutely yes, because there was a lot of discrimination going on. And perhaps the best thing that I could say for it was it gave everybody a equal footing from the very beginning of their of their auditions, of their interviews, of their applications.
As a result of these new legislation from the feminist movement, women musicians were now able to apply to orchestras without the fear of being rejected based on their gender. Orchestras now were held accountable for non-biased hiring. Thus, women gained more confidence and now believed that they could actually hold a career as a musician, which was a revolutionary thought at the time. In addition to the labor equality laws of the 1960s, an innovative and new process of auditioning for orchestral positions emerged to further ensure that women's rights would be recognized during the orchestral hiring process, the blind audition.
Oftentimes they will ask you a specific concerto or a specific movement from a concerto. You will play that, and then for the first round there are always a set number of orchestral excerpts that you're asked to prepare, and you will be asked to play those. Otherwise, the rest of the committee is in the hall, and you're behind a screen so they can't tell who's playing.
The blind audition emerged due to the Art Davis court case. He auditioned for the New York Philharmonic twice, yet he was rejected both times because he was African American. He sued the orchestra, and although his mandate for total use of the blind audition did not pass, other orchestras feared similar lawsuits against them. As in such, they decided to implement the blind audition process in the 1970s and 1980s.
However, the implementation of the blind audition failed to completely eliminate discrimination as it was not used throughout the entire audition process.
The problem is there's no consistent laws for the use of blind auditions, so most orchestras will use a screen for the first level, for the first round of auditions, but not finals.
Yet the impact of the blind audition can be seen today. A study in 1997 collected data from the Big Five, the top 5 orchestras in the country. It concluded that the blind audition increased the chances of women advancing from the blind audition into the hiring process by 50%. It also stated that the blind auditions resulted in an increase in women among new applicants by 30 to 55% and led to a 25 to 46% increase of women in orchestras since 1970. Yet the prevalence of the blind audition's influence can be seen in recent years.
As more women took on careers and they rose to the top, they broke the glass ceiling, which was supposedly up there, and I know it was. But again, talent rises to the top.
Because orchestras were compelled to take responsibility for providing equitable means of hiring and auditioning, women grew more confident that their rights would be secured.
Regarding the blind auditions and the fact that it's behind the screen, I think it definitely puts a lot of people's minds at ease because you know that you're not going to be judged based on your gender, race, or age.
Furthermore, many brave women took their own responsibility to fight, and even today continue to fight, for equality in all places of work. And in orchestras, women musicians are continuing to prove that musical skill depends only on a musician's ability rather than her gender. Women decided to take responsibility for their own rights, for only they could be the driving force against their own inequity. With the feminist movement gaining momentum and resulting in new legislation, the responsibility to recognize women's rights passed on to orchestras as they were now held accountable for non-biased hiring.
Thus, the constant discrimination of women in the orchestral world was overcome through the law and the blind audition.